Welcome to Talking Threads. My name is Kathleen Jantz-Koprivnik, and I will be your host. For today's episode, our guest instructor is Carol Goodwin. The movement in KUMIHIMO is both rhythmical and mesmerizing. At a meeting of the Arachne Weavers Guild, Carol Goodwin taught an introductory workshop about KUMIHIMO. Let's join her in the workshop.
Hi, I'm Carol Goodwin, and I'm going to be talking to you about KUMIHIMO, which is Japanese braiding. It's a very ancient technique and was a secret in Japan for a long time, but the secret is out, and we've been doing it a lot in the West for the last about 20 years, which is how long I've been doing it. And I particularly like braiding with beads incorporated into my braids. You're going to want a total of 16 strands.
Okay.
Does that make sense? And if anybody doesn't have things to braid with, I brought a few yarns up here. Yeah. Of the beaded strands, when you're going to be using beads in a braid, those threads, because they're a little thinner and because they've got the beads included in them, they often have a little bit more take up. So, oh, scissors. So you want to make them a little bit longer than your other threads. So if your one set of threads is going to be a yard long, maybe do a yard and a half for the beads. Yeah.
I'm supposed to put the beads on the ribbon?
I would put them, if you have bead thread, I would use bead thread.
Right now I have it on the silver thread.
Okay, is that going to be strong enough?
Can I hold it?
Yeah.
It feels pretty strong.
Okay.
Metallic, silky, metallic.
2, 3, 4.
Right, unless I pull on it. This would be interesting. Someone took it from falling off the end.
Tie a knot.
When Carol finished teaching our workshop, I asked her if she would mind giving me an interview, and was thrilled when she accepted. Which brings me to your book, and even though it says that it's volume 3, here, I'm going to hand this to you.
Yes.
Even though it's volume 3, this is actually your first because you've done it out of order.
Yes, it's not my first book, but it's my first book in this series about braiding on this little foam disc. There are a number of braiding devices traditional to Japan that are large and wooden and more intricate, but this little foam disc is more accessible. It's inexpensive and easy to carry around with you, and so braiding on the disc is what this booklet is about. And I intend for there to be a series of 5 of them, but I was encouraged to write the 3rd one first. So this is volume 3, and 1 and 2 will be coming along eventually.
Okay.
Hopefully, my goal is to have volumes 1 through 5 done by 2012. And that's because that will be the 2nd international braiding exhibition, which will be in England.
Oh, fun.
The first was in 2007, and it was in Kyoto, Japan, and it was a wonderful experience.
Question, were you a student then, or were you one of the teachers?
A little of both. A little of both. I
Oh.
taught one class, and I took a bunch of others, so it was a wonderful thing. And we had an exhibition. People came from all over the world, as far away as South Africa, Europe, Australia, England. It was a really international group. About 1/3 of the participants were from Japan. The other 2/3 were from anywhere in the world, you name it. And it was really a nice group. And a lot of these people I've been acquainted with online, but have never met in person. So it was a really wonderful opportunity to meet these folks. And we didn't all speak the same language, but we all spoke braiding.
That's
And
the same language.
that worked well.
Yeah.
So
Now, I understand that you are a weaver, multi-shaft, or?
I was never what you would call a complex weaver. 8 shafts about tops out my brain.
And
I-
yet you can do complicated.
Well, it's all what you think of, what you're comfortable thinking about, isn't it? I had an 8-shaft loom, and actually, due to space considerations in my house, and because I hadn't used it, I decided it was better off getting a new home. So I gave it to someone who could take better care of it than I was doing. And so it's freed up a lot of space. Now I have more yarn. The braiding, when I started weaving, I really enjoyed it, and I was doing rugs and blankets and that sort of thing. But I found that I really didn't enjoy warping very much, and so my structures kept getting narrower and narrower. So I went from blankets to scarves to passementerie, and then now I'm doing braids. So this has worked out well. And strangely enough, some braids, if you do them in the traditional manner, can have just as many warp ends as a big piece of fabric. It's not unusual to have 700 ends in a braid, but luckily you can often buy the silk pre-warped, which is very nice. But if you warp it up yourself, I think the biggest braid I've done with individual strands was about 440 ends. So that was a lot of warping, even after all of that. Well, this is a Japanese braid, and my particular love is to find these unusual focus beads. When I find an interesting bead, then I try to make a braid that will complement it. Because you have so many choices of fibers and things, it's a nice way to complement an interesting big bead. This piece is braided with 16 strands, and 2 of them have beads.
All right, I noticed that there's another book that you did with Shirley Berlin.
Yes.
And that one's actually tell us about it, please.
Okay, my other book with Shirley Berlin, we wrote it together, is a result of swaps. A lot of the braiders, because we're all separated far apart, it's hard to find it. There aren't very many braiders in the world. And so in order to exchange ideas and patterns, we have these swap exchanges. Somebody suggests a topic, and everybody makes a braid to that topic, cuts it into pieces, and puts it on a card with the recipe and their thoughts about the braid, and then sends it to the swapmeister, who divvies them up and sends them out, so that you send off, 10 samples of your own, and you get back 10 samples of everybody else's. So it's a wonderful way to trade.
Weavers Guild, what they do.
Yes, and actually the group that I chair is one of the complex weaver study groups. So although I say I'm not a complex weaver, technically I am a member of the group. Yeah, so we have been doing these swaps for about 10 years. Well, it had been 10 years when we started writing the book. It's been closer to 15 now. But we had all of these wonderful little bits of braid that had never been seen. They never got out of their notebooks, and we thought they should be out there in the world. They aren't big enough to do anything with, but they photograph nicely. So we gathered up all the people who braided them and got their permission and took their braids and photographed them, copied over their recipe and their diagrams and into a consistent format and put together this book. So it's got 60 different braids, and we thought they were the best of the bunch of the ones that we had. And there's some really unusual and remarkable pieces in there that are not traditional necessarily. Some of them are, but some of them are very different than the ones that you'll find in the textbooks about Japanese braiding.
Well, the presentation that you did for the Arachne Weavers Guild today was just stunning. And I noticed about half all had designed by Carol Goodwin. So how many years does this comprise?
I've been doing it for, let's see, it is almost exactly 20 years. I started in 1989, so yes, 20 years.
Ooh, so this is not just an interest, this is a passion.
Oh, it is, absolutely, absolutely. It is my other life. You know, there's the go to work and make the paycheck life, and this is the one that, you know, feeds my soul. Yes, yes, exactly.
And I noticed when you were teaching the class here that you're very comfortable teaching. How long have you been teaching?
Probably about 10 years, off and on. You know, sometimes I teach quite a few classes, and some years I don't teach any, so it varies. But I do really enjoy teaching.
It shows. You're very comfortable in your skin, and you're comfortable in front of a group. It's been great.
Oh, good, thank you.
Here's a sample of what a KUMIHIMO pattern might look like. Here's one of Carol's necklaces showing the detail of the beadwork. Here are a few more inspirational pieces and patterns